right, let me bring up the trusty PowerPoint. And Michelle, I'm going to let you kick things off today with the webinar. Then we're going to go to talk some guest accounts. Got some. I think we're going to have a spicy conversation around this using the coverage extension notice and BEC. It should be stats. What's wrong with me? Not states, stats. Uh, and I got some additional fun things to talk about. So, Michelle, let me stop sharing. And by the way, did you, I had asked you about this. Do you have the URL for that webinar to share?
I do. Yep, it's ready to go.
Perfect.
We have a webinar on Tuesday. Drop that in there right now. You probably got an email about it. If you haven't by now, you can go there. It's on session token hijacking. And I think, Andy, were you just talking about that? I'm sorry, I was letting people in. So I think most of you are familiar with it. Chip and Ben are going to be hosting that. So it should be pretty good. Oops, and that's, like I said, Tuesday. Sorry, there are people still coming in. I do have
you know what's amazing, Michelle, is that, like you mentioned, most people know. Chip and I did a presentation to 10 MSPs on Tuesday afternoon. And in our presentation, we talked about token hijacking. And literally none of them knew what it was.
Wow.
They hadn't heard of it before.
Well, if you're not familiar with it, I would definitely attend this webinar.
One of them was a SaaS Alerts customer who never joins these calls, interestingly enough, but he also had never heard of them.
I mean, you guys probably know a little more because we've talked about it on here, but
still. Well, this is a cream of the crop we're talking to here.
Right, but there's always something to learn.
Yeah.
And then just a reminder, office hours will be next Tuesday at 11. And Ben is going to dive into deep fakes. So that should be interesting. I talked to him a little bit about what he's got planned. So if it all works out, it should be fun, and I will be there. So definitely try to be there. What? Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, speaking of deep fakes, I'm gonna just try to grab something real quick here. Ben, did you see this one where CNN reported a finance worker paid out 25 million after a video call?
Yep, I'm sure it did. That's one of the things we're going to talk about.
One of the ones you're gonna be talking about. So yeah, I mean, and this is where, I'm talking to Ryan Weeks, we feel that, I don't know your thoughts on this, Ben, but this is where AI in voice impersonation, like Ryan feels that we're going to see phishing, right, turn into voice a lot, again, migrate or, mutate into voice impersonation and video impersonation, things of that nature. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we're already there.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what happened. And there's software, even open source software, that you can use to swap, someone's face in real time through a video, through a camera. And it does not require that many photos. It used to require like a whole slew of photos of the person. Now you could even take one or two, and it can take that data and pretty much replicate someone's face pretty flawlessly. The voice is definitely interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
So Andrew, the most remarkable thing about that article to me about that deepfake hack is that it wasn't one person that was faked on the call. It was 3. So what made it so convincing for the person, who was scammed and who ultimately sent the $25 million at the request of their CEO for the secret project, 2 other colleagues were faked in to make the Zoom call or whatever it was, whatever platform they were using, look that much more credible. Like, to me, that's all of a sudden a whole different level.
Yeah. We got to verify everything these days. And I know someone just asked if we are all real. I'm real, Andrew's real, Chip is real. Michelle, we made up. She is someone that we just made up. And then but no, I'm on 2 boards, and just this past week, as a board member, at least a few times a month, I have to sign documentation around something. And just this week, the attorney that an outside counsel that one of the companies uses sent us a DocuSign, and I looked at it and said, I'm gonna have to click this link and I'm gonna have to sign something here. I On a separate email, I went back to the individual and I emailed him and said, "Did you just send me a DocuSign about XYZ?" And he said, "Yeah, why?" And I said, "Because I'm not going, unless it's verified, you're verifying it now, I'm not going to do it." And he thought I was crazy, but it's just the state that we're in. And I think that level of vigilance is, it literally took 3 minutes to do, but it could save, hours and hours and hours of heartache.
May I make a statement? I mean, this
Yeah.
is, you know, maybe I'm just an old timer, but whatever happened to let your fingers do the walking? Like the old AT&T commercial. Just pick up the phone and dial them, or communicate with them in a way that's not part of the network, because you got to assume that everything, the entire network, possibly even the email, is compromised. If they're going to go after that level of funds and looking for signatures, I mean, you would think that they would compromise everything in the network, but just pick up the phone and dial. Little old.
I use my personal email address. It was on a separate network.
Okay, fair enough. But even that can be potentially compromised. I mean, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but it just and have a safe word. And by the way, for a lot of these deep fakes, I mean, this may not necessarily work anymore, but it used to up until recently, and I haven't verified it. But if you're on a Zoom call with somebody, ask them to turn sideways. And if they're, the technology is still a little bit flawed, and it's still going to pixelate right around the ears and around the throat and neck area. So, that's one way uh, of potentially defeating it or verifying it.
Peter, we noticed that you're not on camera.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is.
Most of us are, or a lot of us are.
Yeah.
I'm not able to see anybody. I had an issue with Zoom the other day. I couldn't see the screen being shared. Let me try, see. I can't see anybody here.
I see people with cameras on. Not everybody has them on.
Yeah.
Sounds like you need an IT person, Peter.
Yeah.
Probably do. It says virtual background is still loading. Start video anyway. Let's see.
There
There
you
you
are.
go. We see you now.
Okay.
All right,
All
now
right.
sideways, Peter.
Yeah, go to the side.
By the way, guys, on X they did an AI representation of a financial guy speaking and making recommendations for board members for a particular company, and it could be interpreted as being a value. I'm saying not only do we have to worry about it interpersonally, but it's going to begin to shape public opinion
Oh,
and where people focus. And having some way to validate, or I don't know how you do this with a video, whether you put some sort of signature in there that says this is authentic and this is otherwise not. That would be something
how do you control
something
it?
SaaS alerts could help us do, right? Is have a way to validate video.
Yeah,
But
did
that's a
anyone
separate
see
project.
I'm
It's
thinking
already
teams.
spinning in my head,
Yeah.
Andrew.
Did anyone
All right,
see
fair enough.
the Back to the Future 4 trailer that somebody created, and everyone on social media is going nuts thinking Michael J. Fox is coming, like they're all coming back. I mean, it's pretty convincing and everyone fell for it. It's that good. And I was like, I like, because I recognize fonts and stuff because that's just my eye. And I was like, that seems too good to be true. So I looked it up and sure enough, it was a deep fake. But everyone was sharing it and like, I mean, yeah, the general public is like, okay, I see it, I believe it.
Right.
You
Exactly.
had to burst my bubble.
Yeah.
I was expecting.
It's yeah. And look, I guarantee what's going to happen too is that Now this is going to be the ultimate get out of free card, get out of jail free card for someone that actually screws up in a situation. They're going to now say that wasn't me; it was a deep fake. So lots of fun ahead, that's for sure.
I'm gonna say that anyway.
So we're
You're
gonna have
not
a
real
DMARC
anyways.
for video is what I'm hearing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or DKIM, whatever it is.
So, Michelle, anything else on the marketing side?
Yes, I do have one more thing. An email should have gone out to you guys about a partner survey. We would love for you guys to complete by February 29th. It's a leap year. So you have one extra day. I'm going to drop that in chat too. And this just helps us, make sure that's the right one. This just helps us, you know, with the platform, improving things, making SaaS alerts work for you guys. So if you could fill it out, that would be great. All of your answers are confidential and we will not share it outside of SaaS alerts. Thank you in advance.
I think this is the one I took the other day. Is there a reason you asked for our email address twice? I think this was the survey that I
I
took.
didn't do the survey, so I didn't.
That would be a mistake on my part. I'll go in and fix that. Thanks, Gary.
It was very inconvenient that I had to type the same thing twice, but
Was it required? Twice?
yes, I think it was.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. That was great. So Jim, floor is yours on guest user accounts, and you had an interest, I think, a recent compromise you wanted to talk about first as you led into it, right?
Yeah, well, this was going to be a topic that we address anyway, but I really am looking for community feedback on this. So Chip and I were made aware of a vendor recently that was compromised through a service account. I'm not going to go into who it was, how extensive it was, but we've confirmed that that would be the case. This guest user accounts have been something that we've been discussing here off and on for as long as we've had this call. And I can tell you right now that, you know, we monitor about 2 million accounts today. Half of those are about half are what we consider to be billable accounts. The rest are guest user accounts. So we do it because, you know, our philosophy is that anyone that logs in is a threat vector, and we should be capturing that information. SaaS stores, we get charged for that account regardless, even though we don't pass that on to you. That being said, it is costing us money. If you look at Microsoft's own best practices, they specifically state that guest user accounts should be deleted, if not used, every 30 days. And Andrew, as you probably remember, we implemented a while back, I think it was this time last year, April of last year, a account management feature that makes essentially deleting, disabling these accounts a lot easier. Well, no one's really doing it. We have some that have gotten a lot better, but for the most part, in mass, this guest user issue is still a massive issue. Recently, we had a new prospect come on the platform. They had 6,000 billable users, but they had 21,000 total users. Yeah, so like pretty much they had 14,000-ish guest user accounts. They had no idea this was going to this extent, at least. So we want to force or drive better behavior around this issue. So one thought was that we actually start charging 5 cents per user per month for every guest account. I will tell you emphatically, I don't want your 5-cent guest user account money. We don't want to hear a SaaS service. What we want is people to comply with best practice. and shut down any potential issues for your customers. Obviously, that will reduce our cost as well. But the driving force behind it all is that we want to drive the right behavior. And we're at a loss at this point on how to do it, unless there is some monetary component to this. So definitely looking for feedback on thoughts. Eric already has his hand up. So Eric, what are your thoughts?
Well, we actually charge for every account, no matter what it is. So even though you guys aren't billing us, we're billing the client for those accounts. So we're $4 an account on every cloud service that we monitor.
Hot
And
damn,
that motivates them to close it.
Oh, man, Eric, that is awesome. First of all, awesome.
It works real well. It motivates them to get those accounts closed.
Right.
Jim,
That's like the best thing I've heard.
Jim,
Yeah.
I'm going to put an article in here. Love it, Eric. This was at Black Cat. You don't have to go into it in depth right now, but this security researcher demonstrated at Black Hat that by simply having a guest user account and then using a trial of Microsoft's
Power tools,
they were able to completely compromise an environment. So, one of the ways, again, that, in kind of in light of what Eric's doing, and one
And
of
by the way, sorry, Chad is doing it too. He mentioned in the chat.
Good for you, Chad.
Yep.
But again, here's where, I think we have opportunity to get into tabletop exercises with our clients, right? And kind of walk them through, right? Again, what are you going to do when this happens? What's your plan when this happens?
So,
right?
Hey Jim, I love the idea and the idea that the two other guys have mentioned about billing for every account, whether they're real or not. Do you guys have any literature or a tear sheet or something I can give to my VCIO for a conversation that says the process is changing? We've been charging you for your users. We now realize that you've got all these background accounts. Here's how they're created, because that's sometimes vague, but we now need to be a little bit more rigid with it. And our vendor is now charging us, and we need to pass that along. We've got a 60-day or 90-day window to clean this up, but going forward, here's the process, but here's why it's important. And that's what Andrew was getting to, is the implications of it. Do we have any ammunition or discussion points?
So great question, Gary. We can definitely work that up for you. I mean, the information's now out there, but we can compile it and arm you with it. I'm socializing this idea now to get feedback, right? And also, are there additional tools that we have to put in place to help you do this? Obviously, we came out with the account management feature with Respond. You can literally, block these accounts if no one's logged in within 30 days. Ryan Thompson chimed in here, charge us for overages for guest user accounts that are open after 30 days of creation. You can create these rules, right, that we've helped you with. But if there's anything else we can do, we wouldn't put this in place until the end of June. We're socializing here because this is our community and this is where we get the best feedback in terms of how to proceed with certain policies. But we would absolutely do that to help you message this. But this would be an end of June type of scenario.
Jim.
So we got a couple hands up, Andrew,
Yeah.
before you jump in. And I just want to make one comment on the account management feature that we have. Of those million accounts that we've been, I look at it as if we're forced to process that data. which is where the cost lies. Over the course of 2023, 8/10 of those were blocked at one point or another. Obviously, this is a rolling thing, right? Like they come and go and so on and so forth. So the process does work, the tool does work, and with very limited use, partners have used it to block roughly 80,000 guest accounts so that they can no longer sign in, which means we don't have to process the data anymore. So that's the key to that component. And Andrew, you're the moderator, so I'll leave it up to you whether you comment first or go to Eric and then Andy Rowe.
No, we'll go to the guests first. So go ahead, Eric.
Eric had his hand up first.
Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, so we take it a different approach. It's not that the vendor's charging us, is that our team has to monitor and react to all these different accounts. That's why you're getting billed for it. And I don't care how we get the information. Because we have that information, we have to work, and that's why you're getting charged.
Seems simple.
It does.
Yeah.
And Eric, do you get pushback from customers on it?
No, not at all. We don't set the expectation in the beginning, right? Or we do set the expectation in the beginning, and they get charged for it for everything. So they're not used to anything different.
Yeah. And
I knew from the start that every account that's out there, we have to manage and monitor and report on, and that's a cost to us.
Right. Also, maybe do you deliver this in person? Because you're a very intimidating presence in person. So maybe that also helps.
So you're gonna have to comply, or I'm gonna
that.
throw you through my giant sunroof.
Yeah. So those have met Eric. He is a big physical presence. Andy?
I was just going to say there are three elements to this. One is SaaS Alert's helping us with a marketing message to say this is why it's important. Two, for office hours to help demonstrate the vulnerabilities that can exist with a guest account and how one could easily manage that through SaaS Alerts. And then three, helping to say, going forward, this is the follow-up marketing message is one, it's dangerous, they need to be dealt with. But the other piece is, for us to manage this going forward, we're going to disable these if they're 30 days inactive, but you're going to be paying for each month that it remains active. So it's very important to know and help us craft that messaging around this, because I totally get that work has to be done, but our customers, at least those of us that were really early adopters, went with this, and I would love a way to better frame this going forward.
So I want to throw out one use case where I've specifically been involved in pushback from an MSP who got pushback from the client on this topic, and I'd love to get the reaction of you guys as a group. And the use case was that this is a not-for-profit that said basically they had many thousands of guest accounts, and they were all created the way most are through anonymous SharePoint file shares. And the customer response was, well, we want these to be public and we want anyone to be able to download them. So we just send out the links. And my response was, well, it's a bad security practice. And if you have a group of files that you want published, then put them on a website, like put them out there so that you're not giving people access to your domain. And I'm just curious among this group does everyone find that a reasonable statement?
Yeah, see a lot of head nods.
Yeah, I think it's become clear that SharePoint is not a public-facing web interface for data. There are other ways to do it, and I don't think we would. I won't say allow is a pretty strong word, but strongly discourage and have that conversation with our customers. That's a really bad idea for that purpose.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, can I just jump on I love what you just said about SharePoint. So my cousin is payroll business, PEO payroll business, very large company, will go unnamed. Got a call from one of his clients today that a threat actor got into the payroll system, created a new user, and distributed 4 checks to that user. Okay, so you want to know the threat? You want to know the tactic that was used? Entrance through email, into SharePoint, found the more than likely was using some type of AI tool to scrape or, data, right? Found the login and password into the payroll system and created the user. Now, the big question remains, so, and I know we're getting touch off subject, but I love what you just said about SharePoint. The question now remains that I've, because, I'm trying to help him coach them, et cetera, about what they should do next and getting forensics and IR. I said, the question next is does the admin user, which is more than likely who they compromised if they created a user account, a fictitious payroll person, can that person download the 200 employees PHI and PII? Because I said, this is the tip of the iceberg, because if they can do that, the next thing you're going to find out is an extortion tactic coming next about this information going to the dark web. So, Jim, sorry I got off a track, but I think Gary brings up a really good point, which comes all the way back to what a threat actor will do.
Exactly. 100%. Ryan's had his hand up for a while, so I want to get to Ryan.
Hey, yeah, so I think it's fair for you to pass, some of the burden back onto us in this category with these guest accounts. Like if your guys are getting charged for it, I think it behooves us to be a good partner to you guys to help prevent that. What I would be concerned about is in upfront costs associated with these licensing get mitigated often by the sales cycle. And I would hate to have a sales decision, meaning if a client decides that they don't want to pay for these guest accounts, but they want to pay for everything else, and then we lose that visibility or have a security problem still in place, then we're not really moving the conversation forward. But if we have some kind of overage or checkbox saying a tenant to say, after 30 days, we're going to block sign in on all guest accounts, and it's just a checkbox, we don't have to do anything about it actively. It's a setting in your tool, and it's there to comply with Microsoft best practices to allow them to not have to worry about reconciling the number of accounts and how much they're paying for, because guest accounts are not necessarily associated to their employees and their cost of business in the relationship to, say, us as an MSP, whereas guest information is a cost of doing business that they're making a choice to do, and we're trying to guide them in better conversations on what the security costs associated with that. So if you kind of roll it into, say, an overage or something to say, this is instead of paying for licensing, we're going to give you an overage bill for all this activity that you're going to pass on to us, kind of like an Azure overage that you use more bandwidth than you claim you did. Then it becomes an easier conversation to say, this is the amount of money associated with this practice that you're doing in business of allowing guest users. And if you don't want to do that, we're fine. We can either block guest users entirely, or you can comply with the 30-day best practice and we check this box and it's handled. Or you get to pay this overage every month. That would be much more beneficial for, say, me and my organization.
Hey, Ryan, can I throw something at you?
Absolutely.
So, you mentioned a lot of great stuff, but what I'm wondering is if we give something blanketed that all these sales / VCIOs, whatever you call them, in an organization can use. So, which really leads into policy.
Mm-hmm.
So what's management's intent when sharing information with outside resources, third parties? What's the policy in the organization? And they're going to probably, more than likely, most of them go, what policy? Right. So that's where, to me, where to start and say, hey, it's really important that you have that policy. Here's why. Let me share with you best practices from Microsoft and the why behind those best practices. And we've created, again, it's air quoting here because you don't want to have a blanket policy, right? That's bad. But almost like, look, this is the framework of policy information. This is the best practices. And Jim, and going with almost like the thing we're going to be talking about momentarily, where we're going to have you opt out. Like, our best practice is we're going to block those accounts every 30 days. Here's why we're blocking them. If you don't want to do that and don't want us to, you know, and associate and accept that risk, you opt out.
What I've found is when in the conversations with our customers and our sales team, what our clients are making a decision on is just not going with the product altogether.
For
That if
5
like
cents?
if we are asking them to pay for us to manage these accounts and they're used to only paying for things that are licensed and actual people, like not worrying about shared mailboxes and email aliases and guest user account, like the CEOs and CFOs that I've spoke to, they're like, that's not the cost of us doing business with you as a service provider. That is our cost of business as a business with our customers. And they understand that there's an imbalance here, but the way that the conversations have fallen to date is I have far less customers in your product because of these kinds of challenges, rather than I would like to get many more clients. I understand, but we have tried to do what Eric has suggested, is charge for everything, right? Charge for all the accounts that we are having to remediate against and having to monitor and maintain. And when we have proposed that, that's when our clients say, no, we're not going to do that.
But are they?
We just won't go with the product. We won't go with your security solution.
And so, Ryan, have you guys, just curious, have you posed to them then, you know, you're going to, quote unquote, you're going to absolve us from business email compromise. You're going to absolve us.
Yeah, like they'll check the box, they sign a waiver, and then they get compromised, and then they try to take us to court, and then we lose them as a client. Like, people make really bad, dumb business decisions all the time and deal with the consequences all the time. But we're not here to, we can't protect them from making bad decisions. We can make recommendations. But what I'm finding is that they're not understanding this kind of attack vector in this way. And that's
our problem. That's not their problem.
Agreed. And like, I've been working tirelessly to try to teach my sales staff to have better, conversations around this. I agree, but it's quite challenging for me to get about 40 sales reps on a call when they're only instructed to get on calls like this after hours, after 5 o'clock, because we do business meetings with our staff, with our clients, and we only do vendor meetings from our sales side outside of our business hours with our vendors. And so like, there's very challenging for us in many situations when we try to engage in partner conversations like this, because like I can attend, but I can't get 40 of my sales guys to attend a meeting like this.
Yeah.
Eric, want to come back in?
Thanks. So I think Andrew is spot on about policy, right? This all boils down to what the policy is. And when we sign a contract or a quote to deploy Cloud SIM, we have a project that accompanies that is several $1,000s, right? So we're building policy for every that Cloud SIM touches and what the response is. And then we also have a policy exception document that lists any policy exceptions. So not just the monthly, $4 an account, there is a several $1,000 project involved to deploy it and build policy around it. So that way there's no questions, either way. And if there is a question, we refer to those policy documents. And that way everyone is on the same playing field, expectations are set, and we don't have that argument. And I do have some clients that say, hey, we don't want to spend that money. But I can tell you, the minute that they lose tens of thousands of dollars because of BEC, they're signing those proposals within a day or two. And that actually happened last week. And I even forwarded a copy of that email chain to Andrew to see. So it's once they decline it and then they sign your hold harmless, then it just goes from there, right? And they're usually on the train as soon as they have a significant business loss.
Yeah, and Eric, so I love what you're saying, Eric. So Ryan, like, I'll do something off hours even with you and your team. But look, what it is about proper.
Well, I'm having my lead sales engineer and rep coming with me to write a boom, and we'll be able to speak to everyone involved to fully start getting understanding of what's going on, because this has been very problematic, you know. And Eric, I agree with you in many aspects on many of our clients that have a more mature in their organization structure. They're slightly larger, are used to these types of things, and have our larger clients. That has been our experience as well. But we have many smaller clients this is not something they're used to, and they're struggling with cost constraints in every direction, and it's very challenging for them to understand the nuances of these conversations. And what I found very effective with this product is to try to get in early at low cost, get the data, provide a good conversation material around this to move the conversation forward. And it's been very effective because the cost of entry for your product is so low, where we've eliminated many of your competitors simply on cost alone, because you guys give such good visibility and have resources to actually do something about it if the client then does purchase the product and move forward. But I've struggled to try to get all of our clients into the product to try to get that off the ground.
I got a solution. You just get Eric in front of all your customers.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. Like, but Eric, you have years of experience and are a good orator. So like, not every salesperson is good in this topic or category. Not, you know, different salespeople.
Just make it an opt-out. Use our covered extension notification.
Ryan,
well, you can't have, it can't be a conversation on cost, right? The conversation is about risk.
But that's the challenge about teaching salespeople to have conversations not about money when they're used to dealing with money all the time. And it's a very big sales shift to try to talk about risk and those things, when at the end of the day, the sales guys want to know how much money I'm getting and how much the client's got to pay, right? Like it takes a different maturity level of a sales organization to make that shift. And I've found our company has struggled around that with security in specific. Because
but Ryan, the point that you made about the importance of this tool and the cost being what I'll call affordable, we included it as of last July 1st for all of our customers to take that conversation off the table. We're doing this on your behalf. Now we have to have a modified conversation because of the potential increased costs, but that was the approach that we took. And
I pitched that from the beginning. I really wish I was able to get that to the finish line, but I have not been able to convince my organization to do that. You know, we have a lot of customers and a lot of different contracts in a lot of different ways, and they have a lot of concerns about doing that.
Ryan, look, you got a big sales team, and what I've found is you're going to have to focus on 1 or 2 people first.
Yes.
The success will breed success. So pick your stars and work with them and build their capability around a risk. As Eric's saying, this is a risk-based conversation. This is and the conversation really truly is like, look, we're smaller, we can't afford it. You're smaller, you can't afford not to. The big companies can survive, right? When you look at what a threat actor does and how easy it is, right? And I know I'm preaching to the choir, right? So trust me.
I get it. I appreciate you saying it though, because not everyone in this call may have the same perspective or understanding.
Right. So so they need to understand the motive of a threat actor, what they're going to do, how they're going to disrupt their business, right? Like, I can't help you. Right? When a threat actor gets a $50,000 wire out of your account or a $500,000 wire out of your account, my question isn't how much is it to add the service. My question to you is, what are you going to do? Can your company survive if a threat actor takes all of your customer data? Or do you have proprietary information? If they take that, can you reputationally survive? It's not a question, as Eric was saying, it's not a question of cost. It's
right. So the thing that I've seen play out in a lot of clients that start to understand that initial conversation and start to try to trust us in having that conversation and implementing these tools, they are undercutting themselves on cost because they're saying, yeah, I agree, I'm willing to move forward with the product, but I'm only going to pay for these licenses. I'm only going to pay for the accounts that I'm paying for Microsoft licensing for. Because and it seemed to me, this is an anecdotal, it seems like there's such vitriol against Microsoft that they're willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater because they don't want to give, they see it as like being associated with Microsoft and their licensing, and they already have costs associated with that. And there's been so much pain recently about the month to month from Microsoft versus going to annual, and people having to spend so much money around licensing and what this looks like, that they're not willing to pay for additional services to mitigate those things because they're so pissed off at the entire experience.
But
And that's
Eric,
not something we can really control from Microsoft.
no, it's not. But what you can control is what they've just told you. They've told you what their policy is. Okay, no problem. We'll shut down use of all non-production accounts because you've told me your risk tolerance is only around licensed employees or users, correct?
Right.
Yes.
And when we've done this now about 4 times in the last year. And every single time we go and disable all those accounts, the client immediately tells us to undo what we just did and then cancel the product, and has not wanted to engage in continuous conversation about
But my
changing
guess,
that practices in any way.
but
And
my
I'm
guess
just
is, but my guess is
surprised
there
by that.
wasn't. My guess is there was never a policy conversation.
I don't know for certain, right? But I would suggest that there was likely some kind of risk-based conversation about that, because those are the only times we've really been able to get success in adoption of the product. Is when those salespeople, because the anecdote is the challenge is like, I can't check in with every single salesperson to know every single incident, but like you're saying, I have certain champions that I've had these conversations with, and they are having more success than others. And that's essentially what I've taught them, is to have business level conversations, not technology conversations. And we've had adoption, but then we immediately have challenges around the usage of the product in this specific category. We have other, like, we've been able to salvage some of these relationships because of the respond module and the reporting being so great, but trying to tackle guest user accounts, they have no palate for it. And it's shocking to me as well. I did not anticipate that would be problematic, but it has been very business disrupting to them, and they have not been willing to tackle that business disruption or get in front of it, of how these, it seems to me in some ways that like these organizations don't really know how these accounts are really being used, kind of like shadow IT style. And then when we go, the decision makers are saying these shouldn't be there, let's turn them off, and they're not necessarily talking to their staff.
Well,
and then we turn it off, and then everyone can't do their job, and they turn it back on, and then they don't want to continue the conversation, which is what I find painful.
Dude, you and I can take this offline. I can help you with this, but
Okay.
but it's definitely, I can see Eric's wheels going. Like, there's definitely gaps in what management's intent is, what the use cases are, right? And
Yeah.
I think with just some tweaking, you guys can shore this up. Just for time's sake, Jim, can we go into the I'm just going to bring this up here, the coverage extension notice. I'm going to bring that
Yeah.
up. And
It's
then
actually
I've
a good segue.
yeah,
It's
it
a good
is.
segue.
So talk to us. What is this, Jim? For those that may, I know a lot of people on this call know already, but
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. Look, so first of all, from what I am gathering from the coverage extension notification, or excuse me, from the guest user account conversation, like we'll come up with a policy. Obviously, we're going to communicate this very loudly and at a high degree, high frequency level. What I'm taking away is that, we can do this at 5 cents a user for essentially customers that have guest logins that are basically more than 30 days old, right? So and we'll put together some really great documentation so you can be sharing with your customers. And like I said, this won't happen until the end of June. We just want to get out in front of it, especially with this SaaS community. So I presented a few times last week at Schnitzfest, saw Gary there and Eric and a bunch of other folks. I talked about the MRR guarantee. How many of you all know what the MRR guarantee is from SaaS alerts? Okay, there's a bunch of people that don't know. So we talk about this in the upfront sales process, but I also understand that a bunch of you have been with us for a long time, so maybe you're not familiar. So we have now had 60 plus MSPs send out what we call the coverage extension notification. And that is what you see, what Andrew's got up here on the screen. So it's a template that you send out to your customers, essentially saying, look, the landscape has changed, it's evolved, 365 is the biggest threat vector, Microsoft's have changed their terms of use, and in order to have an enhanced level of protection around this threat vector, we need to implement this solution. We're going to keep our costs low. It's only going to be $3 per user per month. We now know, this is not opinion, this is now fact, right? Just from a math perspective, the average opt-out rate is 5%. So what we've done is we've come up with an MRR guarantee. This is for new customers, new partners coming in, and all of you. So I want all of you to be aware of this. First, this is extremely effective. I was presenting at a CEO Council event about a month ago, and I wasn't aware, but Sandy Reeser, who's now the chairman of VC3, a very large MSP partner of ours, who's gone through this process, he was there, and after I spoke, basically stood up and said, we've added $2.4 million of annual recurring revenue specifically from this motion. My only regret is that we didn't do it sooner. So I wanted to make sure that all of you knew what it was and that you knew how to take advantage of it. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Let me stop sharing.
Yeah. Just to take you through the math of it. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the MRR guarantee. So we basically take your customer base. In this case, it would be whatever is remaining, right? So if you have 5,000 users, that's your total addressable market, but you only have 1,000 with us. Well, that's an incremental 4,000 users. What we do is we say we're going to cut that in half, divide by 2. That brings us down from 4,000 users to 2,000 users. And then we're going to times $3. That's $6,000 of monthly recurring revenue, incremental monthly recurring revenue. So what we now say is, if you deploy this coverage extension notification and you don't get that level of increased incremental MRR in 60 days, we will pay you $1,000. This is how effective this motion has become, and we're willing to stand behind it. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew what this was. Anyone on this call right now, have you been part of the 60 MSPs that have tried this? Anyone that want to speak up if you have?
We were going to do it, but we opted, as I mentioned, we just went the whole all-in route, and we gave it away, or included it in last year's price increase. We didn't give it away.
Okay, so you included the price increase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jim, I was trying to communicate with Michelle. I think the fact that you're doing this at the very end of this call is doing a disservice to the value proposition this presents to SaaS alerts and to our customers, and that you should do a completely separate video just on this.
This is what I just sent to you, Andy. We are actually doing free webinars.
Great.
I'm working on the landing page as we speak, but I can tell you the dates are February 20th, 22nd, and 28th. So those emails will be forthcoming. So you read our minds.
So yeah, thank you, Andy, for saying that. We are doing a specific 30-minute webinar just on this. We now have a lot of data back from our MSPs, what they're charging, how they're positioning it, how effective this motion is, and we now have enough data that we can stand behind it with a guarantee. So, but I guess additional thoughts?
Haven't needed it.
What's that, Eric?
Haven't needed it.
Yeah, well, you're the exception. Again, it's got to be that big physical presence that you have.
No, but I think, Eric, isn't it your, it would be your position is, I'm not going to give my customer an option on EDR. Like, I'm not the arguably the number one threat vector to their business. I'm not going to give them an option whether they're going to have it or not have it.
Correct. And, security is changing quarterly, yearly, in several ways. So we just update our service delivery every year and say, this is going to happen at this date. We'd like you to do it earlier because we think it's really important. But if you don't do it by this date, you're going to get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never lost a customer for it.
Yeah. I think far too many of us, again, are, unfortunately in the position where we need the customers. So we do, just don't get me wrong, we need the business, but it's like we're the doctor saying, hey, do you think this is good medicine for you? We'll take your recommendation. Well, no, the doctor knows what's going to keep you alive. I mean, imagine a physician going, hey, you're dying of cancer. Do you want to do it this way? Right. So like, I just think we've got to take more like Eric's command, right? His belief, that's what sells. So
that's the big takeaway from today. Yeah, I think that's what you just said. Command sells, command influences. And when you display that and people understand the gravity of it, they're more likely to act the way that we think they should act.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is a tool, right? This letter is a tool to help. The right approach is Eric's approach. We wouldn't have our customers opt out of EDR. Can any of you say you would do that? Well, this is a bigger threat vector now.
Yeah. So the other thing, I mentioned the presentation Chip and I did Tuesday in front of these 10 MSPs. They didn't know that Microsoft's terms of use changed. So a lot of times, one of the things that makes this coverage extension notification so effective is the fact that we're letting people know this changed. Not only is Microsoft saying themselves or saying to all of us, we're not liable if anyone gains unlawful access to the tenant. We can hold you, the third party and the end customer, responsible. That's a massive shift that happened about 1.5 years ago. And I'm guarantee your customers don't know. Andy.
Well, I was just going to say that this is, and I'm sorry, I've lost what was in my head initially, so I'm hunting here a little bit. But the mere fact that this is, here's my question: would you guys, SaaS alerts, are you going to post this on SharePoint so that we get a guest link to it, or are you going to post this on the website?
We're going to share it with
coverage extension notification.
I'm just trying to point out something here, that this is information customers do all the time to our customers do for their customers, and they're doing it in SharePoint. And this is the whole point of this conversation, what's driving a lot of this.
So we're giving you the coverage extension notification, right? So you can use it. We don't post it
But you're not
anywhere.
posting on SharePoint. You're posting on
No.
the web. You're posting on the
Not even-
website,
we're
and
not
that's
posting
the
on our
whole
website.
point here.
We're not posting on the website either.
Oh,
We're not posting it anywhere. Because the other thing that we found is that, once this thing got out to a number of folks, other vendors have started copying it,
I see.
or some of our partners are using it for other products instead of ours. So, in any event, everyone will definitely be getting it. And we look forward to going it over in more detail on those webinars that Michelle mentioned. So, with all that, Andrew, we're now a minute over officially.
Yeah, great call. We'll look forward to next Thursday, Jim. We'll continue this.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, everybody. Really great feedback today. Very much
Thanks.
appreciated. Take care.
Have a good week.
Yep.